Today we're talking maps, and that might be a nerdy topic just for me, but we are doing a tutorial that will be suitable for anyone trying to get into Unreal. See, maps are a staple of motion design. They're in every documentary ever. They're in movies where people have to find some treasure or take over the world. And my largest project to date was a 3-part doco series that looked at the journey of water across the continent of Australia, called Australia's Wild Odyssey. If you're in Australia, you can still watch it on ABC iView. Maps were an integral part of the narrative, and the production team had a very good vision of what they wanted and sent me lots of reference like this. Expansive, inspiring, and not like a video game. In this video, I'll be showing you how to make maps like these. Now, before we open up Unreal, we're gonna need some source data, which is a ridiculously huge rabbit hole involving GIS data and lots of nerdy stuff.
So I work for a geographic information systems company.
He is a virgin. He is a virgin.
But in the interest of time, I've actually included my prepared maps in the resource pack in the description underneath this video. So let's open up Unreal. I'm just going to go to the Film and Video and Live Events tab and choose the Motion Graphics default project. Now, if you don't have this template, in the description there's another link so you can just download that as well. As a quick aside, I've received some feedback on the file naming conventions that I've got inside the project, which I'll be implementing over the next few weeks. So if you download this project and it looks a little bit different, like the names are a bit different, don't worry, the content of this tutorial will still work. The first thing that we're going to do is close down Sequencer so we have a bit more space, open up the resources folder that you've downloaded from the description, and bring in the images inside Unreal by opening up your materials folder and clicking and dragging them into there. If you double click on the texture, come over here to Texture, Advanced, and where it says X-axis tiling method, set that to clamp. And the Y-axis tiling method, set that to clamp as well. That just stops it from wrapping back on itself, so if it accidentally goes beyond 1, it won't immediately have a bit of purple there. Now all of the assets are imported in, we're going to just clean things up by deleting the text so that we have an empty space to work in. And now we're going to model our map. So up in the top left where it says Selection Mode, click that drop-down box and then choose Modeling. Now we're going to choose Rect, and we're going to just click on the floor of the studio. We'll zero this out later. Drag it up using this blue part of the gizmo about there so we can see it. And then we're going to set the width and depth to 300 by 300. And also the subdivisions I'm going to set to 300 by 300. And just for the moment, I'm just going to drag my basic shape material, Berkshire White, onto there so we can see what we're doing. Click Accept. And now, congratulations, you have modeled inside Unreal. With this plane selected, we have a whole bunch of tools available to us. But before we do that, I'm just going to move this light slightly so it accentuates what we're about to do. So with the gizmo selected, I'm going to hit E to bring up the rotate gizmo, rotate it around, and hit W to bring up the move gizmo. Now I can also just hold down Control and then right mouse button will click and drag and move it along the Y-axis. And if I click and drag the left mouse button, it will move it along the X-axis. I'm going to go back to my rotate and just kind of bring it around there. Yeah, we'll leave it there for the moment just to sort of see what we're doing. If the light isn't exactly where you want it, you can turn off the snapping so that there's a little bit finer control of where you're positioning it. Let's select the plane again. Underneath the Deform tab, there is a tool called Displace. Yeah, that one. When I first press it, it's going to turn your plane into an alien landscape. But what we're going to do is we're going to come to the displacement type and change it to Texture 2D Map. And we're going to drag our DEM file, Digital Elevation Model, into the displacement map slot. And Bob's your uncle, we have some mountains. Now, the jaggies are a little bit much, but we'll leave the displace intensity at 10 for the moment because we're going to be smoothing it later. The resolution, though, is a little bit less than I would like. But when I try and increase the subdivisions, it gives us a warning. Now, this next step is dependent on your computer, but I'm going to disable the size warning and turn that up to 5. So I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to click Accept. We may have to wait for a while for it to be generated and optimized, but trust me when I say I've tried this in several different 3D packages and every single one struggles when you get to this number of polygons. Unreal is actually surprisingly stable and fast, and once it's done optimizing for nanite, you'll see that our frame rate goes up to something that's very, very healthy and it feels smooth to work with. Okay, that took a couple of minutes, or a minute and two. Now, on a lot of these topographic relief maps I've seen, because they're only rendered from one view, that is completely above, they don't really worry about smoothing the jaggies or anything like that. But I'm planning to potentially get in relatively close, and I'm not sure I want the mountains to stay looking like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run a smooth over it. So over here, underneath the Deform tab again, click Smooth. Leave it on Fast Iterative, but I'm going to turn the number of steps back down to 1. Excellent. I'm going to click untick smooth boundary just in case it's doing anything weird with the edges. And then I'm going to click accept. Now this smooth process is just going to round off the jaggies. And for me, it also just makes the resolution of the depth map less obvious. And here we go. Now here we already have some really nice soft shadows and interesting contours happening, but we don't have a texture yet. I'd really like this map to feel like it's been printed on high quality art paper and then the mountain range pushed through to create the reliefs. So first we'll need a base material to make it feel like the reference. Let's jump back in and we're going to go away from modeling mode into selection mode and jump into Quixel Megascans. So go to Window, and then go to Quixel Bridge and log in if you need to. I'm just going to type in paper, go into surfaces, and then I'm going to scroll down and have a little look. Now this workflow may change later this year when the new combined marketplace called Fab launches, so keep an eye out for that. I think I'm going to choose this first plant pressing paper. If you haven't actually downloaded it yet, choose highest quality and then click download. And once you've downloaded it, you'll be able to see that you can add it to your project. If I click add, it's going to create a new folder in my contents drawer called Megascans. So let's just quit out of this and have a look. Inside Megascans, you'll see a folder called surfaces. And then inside there, we'll see our plant pressing paper. And we've got our textures, that makes sense. We've got a material, but it's a material instance. If you've never seen a material instance before, it's kind of like master properties in After Effects. It doesn't show you the underlying bits that make up the full material. Instead, it just gives you the important controls and even texture inputs that all combine under the hood to make a full material. If you've only ever used After Effects before and this is getting a little bit hectic, let me know in the comments what's confusing you, because I'm going to be making a series of videos about going from After Effects into Unreal, and I'd really love to know what to include. So what we're going to do is we're going to close that window and we're going to select all of these. And what we'll do is we'll click and drag them over to our materials folder and see how it says move or copy. If I let go, it'll bring up a menu and then I'll click copy here. Now the reason that I'm copying these is because we're going to be messing around with them and I don't want to mess up the original. Now they have copied in, you can see them here, 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 here. I'm going to just quickly rename them and put maps demo at the start of these. Try to leave the prefix and the suffix the same. Okay, so now that we've made those copies, I'm going to double click on my material instance. I'm just going to scroll down to the textures and I'm going to replace the previous ones with our copies. You can see that this currently says T plant. So now I'm going to replace it and it will say T maps demo. Just to sort of see what it looks like, I'm going to drag it onto our thing and yeah, that looks pretty good. The resolution again of the texture maybe won't hold up to close-up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back in and up the top here, I'm going to tick tiling and offset, dial that down. And for tiling X and Y, I'm just going to set them both to 2. Click save and you can see, yep, that's definitely holding up a lot closer. If we scroll down, we can see the parent of this material instance is this particular one. If I click this magnifying glass over a folder icon, it'll take me to where it is. And you can see it's down in the presets. Definitely not meant to be messed with, but we're going to mess with it. So I'm going to drag and copy it into our materials again. And here we go. I'm going to, again, type in maps demo at the start. And back inside our material instance, I'm going to drag our master material into the parent slot. You can see it says maps demo there now. So now we can see that the master material is being used as the parent of this material instance, and all of the textures are the ones that we have. So we've done a lot of different things, and you may notice all of these little asterisks appearing on items. This just means that we haven't saved yet. So we're going to do this in bulk by going to File, Save All. Unreal operates like a coding environment, so it will save each element as its own file. Okay, let's close this and we'll have a look. Okay, that's looking better, but we can't really see where Australia is. So let's experiment with colorizing it with gradients. Making a good gradient is, again, harder than you'd think. So I'm going to make a short tutorial on it, and if you'd like to be notified about it, just below this video, click the bell icon and choose all. That way you'll be able to hear about it as soon as it launches. So I've included a gradient in the resources folder, and we're going to be using that to colorize Australia. Let's double click on the master material, and we're going to mess around. So we're going to be adding stuff into this material graph. If you've ever been in any kind of offline renderer, you will know what a material graph looks like. But if you kind of look at it, you can see we've got textures going into albedo, metallic, roughness. So we're just going to be interrupting the flow here, the thing going into albedo. So I'm just going to move things around to make some space. To navigate around, you can right click and drag, and you can also zoom with the mouse scroll wheel. So let's select the DEM file, the opacity map, and the gradient, and we're going to drag them in. Just to check everything's working, I'm just going to pipe this opacity map into the albedo, click apply, and come back to the map. And as you can see, it is perfectly surrounding Australia. So now we can see it, but that's not exactly the star that we want. So we're going to change it. Now we're going to create our gradient lookup, and we don't actually need any more nodes. What I'm going to do is I'm going to connect the red channel straight into the UVs of this texture sample. Now we could sort of see that it's doing something down here, but if I wanted to look at it a bit more up close, I'll come over here to the preview window, choose preview plane, and I'm going to select this node, and I'm going to hit Control-Alt-Space. And that actually previews the texture on this plane. So if you don't have that shortcut, you can right click and go to Start Previewing Node, or you can also bind that keyboard shortcut by going to Editor Preferences, searching for Start Preview, and then bind a shortcut here. So now that we're looking at it, how does this actually work? The reason it works is because red is just outputting a number between 0 and 1. UV inputs are also only between 0 and 1, where 0 is the bottom left and 1 is the top right. By piping this into the gradient, every single pixel is looking up a point on this gradient between 0 and 1. So this is pretty good, but I don't actually want the color anywhere else besides Australia. I just want it white outside Australia. I'm going to use this opacity map as a mask. Let's create two things. I'm going to type in 3 and choose a constant 3 vector. And I'm going to right click and type in lerp, which stands for linear interpolate. Now a lerp node fades between two inputs, and a 3 vector is basically just a color without an alpha channel. So if I pipe this into one input on the lerp, and then pipe this one into second channel of the lerp, and then if I use the opacity map to control the fade between the two and start previewing it, you can see that wherever it's black, we are using input A, and wherever it's white, we're using input B. So I'm liking this, but I kind of feel like I want this gradient to be inverted. So we're going to be having sort of like a yellowish along the land and then going to purple on the mountains. So I'm going to invert this gradient. Luckily, if we just have an input which is between 0 and 1, all we need to do to invert it is subtract it from 1. Luckily, there's a node called a 1 minus node, and if we pipe that in, we can now see that our gradient is inverted. Okay, that's good, but like there's not really much purple now. In After Effects, I might use a levels effect to change the gamma of this gradient, but there is another way of doing that. What I can do is I can add a power node. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the exponent to 0.5, and that's exactly what I'm after. But if I just pipe that in, I won't get any of the paper texture. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply it by the incoming texture. And now if I pipe that into the albedo, click apply, and save, we can see that we are getting exactly what we're after. A paper texture going up to purple on the high mountains. Now I'm going to start setting up the lights and stuff as I would like. Okay, now I've got things set up as I want them. We're going to have to create some text. Now for text, I'm going to set it up inside Unreal's UI tool called UMG, or Unreal Motion Graphics. It allows us to format font in an accurate way, but it's about as easy to use as Premiere's title tool. I have high hopes for what it'll be like to design text inside Unreal once Project Avalanche launches. But until then, we have UMG. The thing is, UMG is an insanely powerful tool. It has the same responsive design capabilities as Figma or Cavalry. So you could design a text layout once and then render out for any resolution or any aspect ratio you want. Just for the moment, we're going to be using it to create a simple text layout. So we're going to come in here and we're going to create a new folder called UMG. And inside there, we're going to right click, go to user interface, and select widget blueprint. Select user widget underneath common. And we're just going to call that W_map title _01. So we've named that and we're going to double click on it. And this is our UMG designer. So the first thing we're going to do is create a canvas, just so we have something that we can align to. And then inside this canvas, I'm going to drag down a text block. Now it just shows up in the top left with this giant icon, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to the right, click the anchors drop-down box, and I'm going to hold down Control and Shift while I click this center. What that does is it moves the anchor to the center of the block and then moves them both to the center of the screen. Again, if I want to move around, I'm just right mouse clicking and dragging. We need to remember to make sure our text is center justified, and then we can start typing. I'll fast forward this because there's a lot of repetition after this. What I'm doing is I'm taking a lot of inspiration from this reference. I love the feeling, the text, the lines and the labels, they bring to the overall map. Like in Australia's Wild Odyssey, I used a lot of small elements to make it feel like a physical map. In our map for time, we're just going to be doing the main map title. But as a fun kind of little thing, you'll see that in this reference it says, including Tasmania, like it's some kind of huge achievement that the map has it on there. Tassie is famous for being left off maps, so I understand why there's a chip on their shoulder. So now we've set up our main title widget, but we can't actually put it into the scene just yet. We actually need some kind of holder for it. I guess kind of like Element 3D needs a layer to be put on. So I'm going to right click, I'm going to create a blueprint class and choose actor. An actor is just something that you can put inside a level. I'm just going to call that BP_map_01_holder. All right, so double click on this, and inside our blueprint editor, you'll see up here there's a bunch of components. We need to add a widget type component, and then we're going to get it to reference our widget. So we add our widget component. You can see that it's got a plane there. And if we just come here over here on the right where it says widget class, if we click down and we look for map, we can see our widget, W_map title 01. We can also just click and drag from the content drawer onto the widget class. And there it is. It's in our viewport, but it's getting chopped off. So what I'm going to do is just come over here to the draw size and make sure that is set to our screen size, which is 1920 by 1080. Now we can see our whole title there. I'm going to set the Z rotation to 90 degrees because I know I need to turn it around, and it looks pretty big, so I'm just going to set it down a little bit. 0.1. Okay. And I'm going to click compile and save. Now what I'm going to do is, for the blueprint holder, I'm going to click and drag it out into the map, and there we have it. Hit E to rotate it again and make it flush with the map. And I know the map is at 0, so for this title, I'm just going to set that to 1. So it's still a little bit big, so I'm going to set the scale back to, yeah, about there, just to give a sense of being a little bit more expansive. I'm going to frame it in the map. Okay, that's pretty much where I want things to be at. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back to our timeline and open up the sequence. Our camera isn't set up for anything though. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add a bit of a camera move by just deleting that. Going to set our camera to focus, track our map. And now I can start zeroing out our locations. Yeah, I'm going to add a few camera moves and I'm going to render it out using one of my 4K presets. So the first time you use one of my render presets, you'll probably have to compile quite a few shaders, but it should only take a few minutes, and it should only be for the first time that you use it in a project. Here is the result. So I hope that gives you a pretty good example of something done from start to finish in Unreal. Obviously, not everything is as smooth as, using After Effects or Cinema 4D, but at the same time, there's a lot to like about Unreal, and I'm barely scratching the surface of the potential of this program. So if you'd like to come along and learn some more, just make sure that you set your YouTube notifications to all, and please leave a comment letting me know what interests you about Unreal and what you'd like to learn. Thank you.